I think we can go ahead and get started. Again, if you just joined the meeting, make sure to sign in on the tiny URL shown on the screen, and we'll also drop it into the chat as well. And then also, just before we start as well, please go to this tiny URL. We'll be doing a few questions throughout the presentation just to make sure you guys are retaining the information, so just make sure to have it up on the screen so you can answer them when the time comes. So hi everyone, welcome to the first session, or second session really, of our workshops to really teach you more about the inner workings of EWB. Today we will be covering the EWB International Project Process from adoption to project completion. And this is definitely going to help you guys get a better sense of some of the work that you would be involved in when working on any one of your projects. And then afterward, we'll also be going into detail about our current projects' histories and the process of each one. Just some background. Hi, my name is Melissa. I am currently a senior majoring in civil engineering, and I am the secretary for Engineers Without Borders. And a little bit about my journey. I joined when I was a freshman, and I joined the Guatemala project, and that year we started the adoption for the current Guatemala project. And I actually served as one of the subcommittee leads in that project. So definitely for any new members who have joined, there's definitely a lot of leadership ways to get involved and to get more into the project as well. Sophomore year, I then transitioned into the project co-lead for the Guatemala project. Last year, I served as the marketing chair, and this year, obviously, as secretary. And so before getting into the nitty-gritty of things, I just really wanted to speak about the mission and purpose of EWB. So the main goal is to really produce long-lasting engineering solutions that are sustainable for our partner communities around the globe. And we're really focused on helping to alleviate everyday problems that these communities are facing by implementing our unique engineering solutions. And so there's really no one-size-fits-all solution for any of the problems that EWB encounters. Each solution is pretty specific to the geography, the culture, and the community that we partner with, and we're really big on building these projects to last for a long time. And so there's a lot of variety in the types of projects that EWB takes on. So one of them involves water supply projects, which deal with providing the source, storage, or distribution or treatment of water for communities. So projects can involve wells, rainwater catchment systems, storage tanks, and things along those lines. And so as you guys might know, two of our current international projects, Kenya and Tanzania, deal with drilling borehole wells to provide a sustainable water source for their communities. Sanitation provides waste solutions for communities. Civil works provide improvement to basic public infrastructure such as roads, dams, and things along those lines. For agriculture projects, they work to improve farming and production capabilities for our communities. So some projects may involve irrigation systems to harvest processing. Energy projects aim to improve and provide consistent, sustainable energy for communities. And the last type of projects, which are the structural projects, work on bridges, buildings, and really have the goal of providing a stable foundation for the communities. So our Guatemala project falls under this umbrella. And while our specific chapter currently only has 4 projects, EWB as a larger org is involved in over 200 projects in over 40 countries. So we're extremely diverse and global. Okay, so let's get into the international project process now. There are 5 main steps involved in this process, beginning from adoption. We move on to assessment. Once assessment is complete, the team can move on to implementation. And then once all implementation has been done, there is a monitoring and evaluation stage. And after everything is complete, the team moves on to closing out the project. And overall, projects can be a lengthy process, ranging from completion in under a year to even 7 or 8+ years. So, And then just before going into the details of each step, I also wanted to introduce something really vital to everything that we do, which is Volunteer Village, as it's something that I'll also be referring to throughout this presentation. Anyone, including all of our new members, old members, can make a Volunteer Village account on the Engineers Without Borders website. And with that, you're able to access a lot of different variety of information, including chatter feeds, groups, and everything that EWB does, and all the applications that we have to submit, and all the information that is transferred between our chapter and EWB headquarters is submitted through Volunteer Village, even our project adoption apps. And there's also an abundance of courses that you can take regarding different aspects of the project process. Some of them entail cultural awareness, safety and health, and then also financial courses as well. So, question 1 is, oh no. Okay. Is where do EWB chapters submit their requests for project adoption? So the first step in the project process is project adoption. And this step really begins with the community application. So the community themselves will submit an application that identifies their specific needs and willingness to collaborate in the project process. And through this app, Engineers Without Borders is able to measure their level of commitment and their available resources that the partnering community can bring to the collaboration, because EWB as a whole is really interested in seeing where the community's interests lie and really wants the project to be a partnership with them and not a one-sided project where chapters go in to just implement their solution without any mutual agreements. So they really value this step in the process. And once these applications come in, EWB reviews and assesses them, and if approved, they're uploaded to the website where teams and chapters are able to browse through a variety of different applications. They can see the location, the pricing, the type of projects. And this is where EWB chapters can decide whether or not a project aligns with their interests. And if it does, then they can choose to submit an application to formally adopt the project. And if selected, the chapter is then awarded the project. And during this step as well, to adopt, something crucial that the chapter needs to do is find a project mentor that can serve as a guide and a responsible engineer in the project process. And obviously, since we are college students, we definitely value the input of the professional engineers, so they're involved in all the steps throughout the project. So once the chapter is awarded a project, the team will undertake an assessment of various aspects of the project, including community demographics, health metrics, existing and desired infrastructure, and all the technical data that needs to be gathered in order to create and design a sustainable solution. So obviously this process involves extensive research conducted both at home during the project meetings and also in country, which allows the team to gain a better personal understanding of the needs and expectations that the community related to the project has. And it also serves as the capacity to start building and fostering a relationship with the community. So assessment begins with the pre-trip plan, where the chapter has to declare their objectives of the trip. And the purpose is to really determine overall project feasibility and collect any data, as I mentioned earlier, that the team would need when developing the situation. So within Volunteer Village, the project leads would need to go in and generate the pre-trip report and also trip records as well. And obviously, since 3 of our projects are international and a large portion of EWB is to do projects internationally, they're very conscious about the safety of the members, and we as an organization at Rutgers are also very conscious about the safety of our members. So before planning any trip, we keep a close eye on the political climate and the environment of the area in which we'll be traveling to determine the risks of the trip. And EWB does this as well. And after the planning happens and EWB headquarters officially okays the trip, then the team is permitted to travel. And during this trip, it's really the first instance where you're truly able to establish the relationship with the community, in addition to gaining any vital pieces of technical information. And then post-trip, the team will need to file a report with the information gathered during the trip. And another key form that must be signed is the community or project partnership agreement, which indicates that the community is comfortable moving forward in the process, and it also serves to set any key guidelines between partners within the project, obviously key partners being the community, the EWB chapter, and also any NGOs, which are non-governmental organizations that are participating in the project. So our second question is, what does NGO stand for? Okay, moving on, our implementation trips. So once the assessment trips have been completed, and all the information has been gathered, the team can move forward in the process with developing the solutions for implementation. So during implementation, the chapters are involved with very detailed planning, which includes an alternative analysis that allows them to weigh pros and cons of different options for achieving the project objective. And then after generating a few different solutions, the team will then submit their alternative analysis into Volunteer Village, where there's a lot of back and forth happens between headquarters and the chapters themselves. So as you can see in this diagram, obviously the chapter starts with alternative analysis. Once they submit, the internal reviewers will process it, review it, and then make comments back to the chapter, and then which the chapter would have to prepare and upload their response and revise the report. Once alternative analysis has been approved, then the chapter can move on to moving forward with the implementation plan. Obviously, they'll have to submit their implementation plan to Volunteer Village, and again, the process between back and forth between internal reviewers and the chapters will begin until the final design and implementation plan has been accepted. Okay. And then once the final design is approved with all of the details with how construction will happen, the team can move forward with traveling to implement the solution. And during the trips, the chapter members really work alongside the community members to complete the work required to produce the final project. And implementation trips can happen over a course or duration of a time. It doesn't only have to occur once. Obviously, construction is a lengthy process, so there are possibly many trips involved. And then after each implementation trip occurs, chapters must submit a post-implementation report. That leads us to question 3, which is, what must chapters submit after implementation trips? And then once all the solutions have been completely implemented, the next step in the process is the monitoring and evaluation stage, which is really designed to see how effective the design was. And this step is really here to ensure that the solution that was implemented is functioning properly and is serving the purpose for which it was meant to do. And in order to do this, teams will usually travel once or twice back to the community to assess once a period of time has elapsed since the final completion. And during the visits, the chapters would normally be collecting metrics that were set beforehand and analyzing those metrics in comparison to the baseline to see how effective the implementation was. And these trips are also important as the chapter will usually want to teach the community how to maintain the project and troubleshoot any errors that may occur to promote sustainability, because once we officially leave the project, we don't return. So we definitely want to leave the project in good hands and make sure that the community knows how to fix any problems that may arise should they. And then the final stage in the project process is closeout, in which the chapter will formally close the program and provide one last status report. And then the team will also need to sign the partnership agreement to indicate that the community is in agreement with the solution and is okay with the termination of the project. And our last question is, what is the final stage in the project process called? So that brings us to the end of this portion. Feel free to submit that Google form now, but we will be moving on to the project history aspects, and Praveen will be presenting about this.
Yeah, thank you, Melissa. So, hey everyone, my name's Praveen. So I'm be serving as your president this year. Just a little background about me. So I'm a senior studying computer science and electrical engineering. A little background into how I got involved with EWB. So I also joined my freshman year, and I first joined the Camden project, and then I quickly became pretty involved in the Camden project, became a subcommittee lead my freshman year, and then was eventually elected project lead for my sophomore year. And in addition to that, over the course of my sophomore year, I also became involved with the Kenya project a bit. And then as my sophomore year came to a close, I was elected director of development for the chapter, which means I primarily handled a lot of the financial fundraising aspects and making sure that all our projects have the funding to operate. And then in addition to that, over the course of my junior year, I also worked a part as a member of the Tanzania project as well. And then that led me to where I am now as president of the chapter. So on that note, we can go ahead and get started with the presentation, and I can let you know about what our projects have in store for you. So our first project is Camden, and Camden is a pretty unique project because it is one of the few domestic projects in EWB in general. So as a domestic project, we were founded in 2012, and then just a general like sort of background as to what we do. So Camden is considered what's called a food desert. Food deserts are basically places that don't have access to a lot of fresh produce and vegetables. So their options and ability to have a very varied and like healthy diet is really limited because they pretty much only have access to processed food and stuff like that. So to help combat that, there's a local organization in Camden called the Camden Community Gardens. The Camden Community Gardens, basically what they do is they take like old abandoned lots that have been torn down but nothing's been put on them and sort of convert them into community gardens and use them to grow crops for the surrounding area. So that way to sort of help infuse some more fresh produce into the overall community. We work with them to basically sort of help bolster their gardens and sort of make them more efficient. So what we do is we basically build sheds that act as rainwater catchment systems. So you can see a picture of it over there below. So that's a shed in that was a work in project. Work in process. It's already been completed. Basically, the way that shed works is it's like it has a slightly sloped roof, and then at the end of that sloped roof, there's going to be a little gutter system that will collect water, and that's basically going to serve as a rainwater catchment system. So as it rains, that shed will collect water into a tank, and then we'll pump that water into the surrounding area. So in terms of how we've done that over the past couple of years, so I said our project was founded in 2012, but not quite exactly. Technically, we're on the third iteration of the Camden project. So the very first version of the Camden project was founded in 2012. And then we closed that first project, which was located on 28th Street in Camden in 2014. And that was probably the most bare bones version of the project itself. Back then, all we had was just a rainwater catchment system that collected water. And then it was up to like the people who were working on the garden to actually distribute the water themselves. As we moved forward into our second project that was located on 408 Beckett Street, we sort of upgraded and we also introduced an irrigation system. So we added a solar panel on top of our structure, and then we also instituted a pump and drip wire irrigation to sort of automatically irrigate the surrounding area as well. And we finished that up in 2017. And then we also opened up our third project in Camden in 2018 at 240 Beckett Street. And we're currently working on that. And the sort of the next step we've gone to go even further with the project is to basically introduce a automatic irrigation system. So I mentioned that we had the solar panel powering a pump to sort of water the surrounding area. Well, that was always manually operated. Someone would have to come in, turn on the pump, and then know when to turn it off. What we've been working on in the meantime is developing a system that utilizes a Raspberry Pi to collect basically water moisture readings from the surrounding area, as well as weather data to determine automatically when the surrounding soil needs to be watered and when it doesn't, to one, take out the human aspect and make it as like sort of automatic as possible, and also to really maximize our efficiency and making sure that we're not wasting any water that we could otherwise be saving. Yeah, and that pretty much sums on Camden. So we can move on to Guatemala. So Guatemala is it's our newest project actually. It was founded in 2017. So we had already been working in Guatemala actually beforehand, but after our project closed up, we were looking for new projects, and we eventually settled on a project in a city called Chailaes in Guatemala. So basically, the entire purpose of this project is that their current school building located in town is not really properly well built. There are a lot of particulates in the air as a result of the shoddy building, and that's giving a lot of the children in the building respiratory problems, which obviously isn't ideal and something that needs to be fixed. So how we're partnering with them is to basically design a new school building in the area that'll be much better built and where the children can really safely go to school and not have to worry about any respiratory problems. In terms of the timeline of how this has been going, so we founded the project in 2017, and over the course of the 2017-2018 school year, we were primarily focused on just finding a mentor. So Melissa mentioned this earlier about having a mentor is a really important part about what we do here at EWB. So we do a lot of hands-on work, but it's also really important to know that the work we do has very tangible effects. Like the work you'll do here, the designs you make will go into production somewhere across the globe, and very like human people will be using this. So it's very important to make sure that what we're building is safe and will be proper and actually well built, like in the area we're going for. So that's why it's really important to make sure that you're selecting a mentor that's really appropriate for the job and that can really help you out, because we really need to make sure that what we do as EWB is sustainable and will work and won't be something that could potentially put people's lives in danger. So that whole year was sort of dedicated to really finalizing the project and getting a solid mentor for our project. And then moving forward into the summer of 2018, that's when we had our first assessment trip. We sent down 6 members down into Guatemala to sort of survey the land, get to know the community, give them a face for organization, let them know who exactly EWB USA Records are. And then in addition to that, I'll also take any necessary information, collect surveys, and so forth. And then coming back, since then, they've just been working on creating the school designs and basically generating the designs that will be implemented in Guatemala. Though we were planning to implement initially in the summer of 2019, though we hit a hiccup where, as we were sort of nearing an implementation phase, the community had a change of heart and decided they wanted to make a couple of changes to our designs. So we had to push back our initial implementation by a year to sort of heed their wishes and sort of get their extra initial input into our designs and change them up so they'd be happy. And yeah, that's basically all pretty much coming to an end at this point. The designs are almost complete. We're sort of just working on finalizing the very final aspects. And then we will hopefully be doing what we were calling a remote implementation. We were initially hoping to actually implement this past summer, but unfortunately due to COVID, that was actually pushed back. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to be hiring local contractors and hopefully getting them to implement our designs in Guatemala itself. So yeah, that wraps up Guatemala. We can move on to Kenya. So Kenya is actually our oldest project. It was founded way back in 2009, and it is a borehole well project. So what that means is basically the surrounding area does not have access to a lot of fresh water. So what we're trying to do is drill a borehole well that will supply the surrounding area with water and thereby give them, access to clean fresh water without having to go potentially really far distances just to get potable drinking water. So how that's sort of gone is initially started in 2009. We adopted the project. We spent that first year finalizing the details, getting a mentor, and then moving forward to 2011 and 2012, we had 2 assessment trips. We went down, did hydrogeological surveys, collected the information we needed to sort of determine, okay, where do we want to implement? Where do we want to do? What sort of information do we really need to get this project underway? And then in 2013, that's when we had our first drilling attempt. And by attempt, I mean it was unfortunately unsuccessful. So that's just like a very real part about EWB. We do very real work here. And while that usually is very successful, there are going to be failures, and failure is just an inherent part of what we do of the EWB project process. We're doing real work. We're trying to solve real world problems, and you don't always hit the ball on the first try. And in this case, we unfortunately drilled. When we drilled, we hit up empty. We didn't actually hit a water reservoir, and that drill was basically useless. So at that point, you sort of have to really consider a lot of things at that moment in the project process. So for one, you have to understand that drilling a borehole well is not necessarily a very quick process. So you have to take a lot of time to really determine where you want to drill. Again, so just like you don't want to end up in a situation like we did in 2013 where we drilled dry. You want to make sure that where we're drilling actually has water. You want to be very consistent and like precise with your surveys and making sure you're picking a really good spot. And you also want to make sure that like you're hiring the right people to do it. And also financially, it's just a very expensive operation. So it was something that's looking like a 4 to 5 year setback. And while that might be like, all right, back to the drawing board, we'll get back to it in 4 to 5 years. you have to understand that we're working with people that have very real, very now needs. Like these are people who need water now, and we can't just be like, oh, we're sorry, we drill dry. We'll be back in 4 to 5 years, and we'll get you your well. So we also had to, in addition to working on our well, set hopefully to implement again in another 4 years, is also like devise some sort of like intermediary solution, something to sort of help assist them and help sort of deal with the problem while not necessarily being a permanent solution, at least something to hold them over until we could drill that well. So what we ended up doing is the next year in 2014, we went down and we installed rainwater catchment systems, similar to what we have in Camden, but just on a larger scale. Put on a lot of tanks to make sure that they could at least have a secondary source of potable drinking water that would at least, sort of help them over the next couple of years while we were working on our next drilling design. And eventually in 2018, we finalized our designs. We went down to Kenya and we drilled, and this time we hit water, as you can sort of see in that picture. And that was a really great moment for the project. After having that first initial failure, it was really good to go down and actually complete this project and get the well drilled. And so as of now, so what Kenya is currently working on, we have a well there. We have a well installed. We're sort of working on a sort of a water distribution system. So the well is already there, but people have to walk to the well. Albeit it's not a very far distance, you just still have to walk to it. So we're working on a better way to sort of distribute that water from the well to the local residents. So yeah, that pretty much wraps up Kenya, and then we can move on to our final project of the day, which is Tanzania. So Tanzania is our second youngest project. It was funded in 2016. Very similar to Kenya, it is also a borehole well project. So this project is focused on getting clean, potable water to the surrounding area by drilling a borehole well. So
Oh, Praveen, your mic cut out. Like, we can't hear
okay,
you right now.
can you hear me right now?
Yeah, we can hear you now.
Okay, yeah, sorry about that. A little weird. My AirPods sort of disconnected randomly. So I'll just start from the top again. So Tanzania was founded in 2015 and 2016. And basically, we went down the following next 2 summers, the summer 2016, summer 2017, to do assessment trips. So basically, again, we're basically putting a face to the community, letting them know who they're working with exactly, who we at EWB USA Rutgers are, because the connection with the community is very important. We have to make sure that the designs we're working on uh, are what they want. We want to make sure that we're on a good consensus. So we have to establish that relationship really well. And then also collecting all that necessary information. We want to avoid what we had with Kenya in 2013. We want to make sure that when we drill, we hit water. We want to be successful. So these assessment trips are very careful for establishing those relationships and also collecting all the necessary surveys and really getting all that information to make sure that we can be successful. And then, yeah, moving forward into sort of the 2017, 2019 school years, we basically focus on creating the well designs, deciding where exactly we want to drill and so forth, and finalizing those plans. And we were actually planning, once again, just like Guatemala, on implementing this past summer. But unfortunately, with COVID, things sort of went haywire, and we weren't able to do that because EWB ended up shutting down travel for all 2020. But fortunately, we still do have this obligation to our community. So even though that was delayed, we are planning on implementing this semester. We're going to be hiring a local contractor similar to Guatemala to sort of help do the drilling for us. So we're basically in the process of finalizing all our plans. We're going to be submitting our basically our project request, and we're going to go down virtually. In reality, we're going to have contractors go down and drill that well for us, and sort of in that way fulfill our obligations to the community. And yeah, that pretty much wraps it up for Tanzania and our projects in general. I'm more than happy to take any questions right now. Doesn't even have to be related to the project. It could be EWB related. We have a lot of e-board members on this call that could be more than happy to take your questions, or just engineering or anything at all. If you guys have any questions, feel free to throw them out right now. If not, if you guys don't have any questions, you're also free to drop. This pretty much marks the end of our presentation, but I'll stay along with a couple of the e-board members to answer any questions if anyone has. But otherwise, thank you guys for coming out. We really appreciate it, and hope you guys learned a bit. Right. So I'll answer those two questions first, starting with where did the funds come from these projects? So basically, three separate aspects. So one, we do get a little bit of money from EWB. This varies from year to year. Something that was recently implemented last year was what was called a cost share program. So basically, the cost share is they sort of evaluate where we are in our part of the project and determine what our expected expenses are going to be for that year, and then they attempt to cover a portion of it. Though this is very recent and it only happened this year. Another huge portion is from Rutgers. Well, not really huge actually. Rutgers doesn't really give us a lot of money, well, this semester we're very fortunate. We're getting a lot of money from them, but usually in the past we've gotten 7 or 8,000 from Rutgers. But for the most part, our primary funding comes from ourselves. So I mentioned I was director of development at one point during my time here at EWB. So directors of development are really key toward making sure our projects have this funding. They're the ones writing up all the grants, creating fundraisers. So fundraisers like grants are a really big part about how we're able to generate the money to really see these projects through. Yeah, in terms of when projects are meeting, so like what Shreya said, we'll be dropping one to meets. Project times aren't finalized yet. We're going to basically ask you guys when you guys are free. And so we're working around your schedules and make sure we're operating projects at times that are most convenient for you guys. Okay, how long does it typically take to come up with ideas for projects? It's pretty variable. I think it's pretty variable. It sort of depends on where you're working, what you're looking for exactly. You have to consider sort of the needs of your or like the capabilities of your project. So, for example, a lot of projects sort of vary in terms of scope and actual monetary commitment. Projects like Camden are pretty cheap, they won't run you more than $5,000, whereas borehole well projects like Tanzania and Kenya can run you well more than like 40 grand. So there's a huge range in terms of what projects can cost. So that in of itself is going to be sort of a big factor in determining, well, what project as a chapter do we want to undertake. We have to consider our financial obligations. And we also have to consider our technical abilities, right? Sort of what are we as a project, like what are we able to sort of, or what are we as a chapter able to do? Like what technical capabilities do we have? What problems can we actually solve? So those are the two sort of like components that really go into determining what project you want to take. And then you just sort of have to hash it out. It can be very variable, but for us, it usually won't take more than a year to determine a new project to take. Okay, let's see, what else do we have here? So what is the role of a freshman in EWB? So this is really up to you. You can be as involved as you want. EWB, in my opinion, is really an organization where you get out of the club whatever you want. So basically, like if you want to put a lot of effort into it, you can really be an active contributing member and do a lot. We are more than here to help you and really teach you the ropes. So you can't exactly choose what you want to do then. Like we're gonna have work for what you want to do, but like you're more than welcome to step up and take on as much responsibility as you want within the organization. Your project leads are really here to see you succeed, and they're willing to really show you the ropes. So we'll teach you the information you need to know, and you'll see it's very dependent on the individual projects, because obviously each of the individual projects work in very different areas. So you'll see once you join the project sort of what the specific work is. But in terms of what you can do, like the sky's the limit, even as a freshman. How long are the trips? So the trips are usually 2 weeks, 2 to 3 weeks for international projects. For Camden, they are day trips because since Camden is so local, we don't really go down and stay because it doesn't really make sense when we can just sort of drive down every day. So Camden operates more on a daily scale. We'll go down for a day, but we'll go down much more frequently because obviously it is just an hour and a half drive away. Do all members get the opportunity to travel? So you can be eligible, but we don't send all our members to the location. So basically what happens is when an international project is implementing, the project leads will sort of hold interviews and basically see who's interested in traveling, and then eventually select a actual implementation crew of people to travel, usually consisting of like 6 people or so. But Camden, since it's a local project, everyone can go down and implement and travel. I'm not sure if there are any other questions. Do you guys see anything? Because there's like a bunch of stuff went through the chat right now. Anyone else want to hop in? Melissa, Shreya?
Hi guys, I've been trying to answer your questions in the chat. I'm Shreya, I'm the vice president. I just saw the question about multiple projects. You can join multiple projects, just if you're gonna apply to a subcommittee lead, we ask that you try to stick with that one project throughout the rest of the year if you get the leadership position, but feel free to even if you get the subcommittee lead in one project, feel free to go to the other ones if you have time. How did you guys learn to work on these projects? That's actually a really good question. Basically you spend the first, I'd say couple weeks just learning about what the project is about. And you basically it's a lot of asking older members questions and being where can I help out and stuff like that. And usually subcommittee leads or e-board members are always there to kind of assign tasks to people and kind of tell you what to do. And the project leads always have some sort of plan for the day, and they're okay, this team's gonna work on this, that team's gonna work on that. So don't be worried about showing up to a meeting and not having anything to do.
When do we start
When do we-
helping? So project meetings are going to be happening the week after next week. So that's going to be the week of October 4th. We'll send out an email basically that consists of like when all the projects are going to be meeting. And once that starts, you're more than welcome to sort of go out to the project meetings and sort of start getting involved. What else do we have here? How did you guys learn to work on these projects? So as Shreya mentioned, it's really sort of on the job. Like once you get part of the project meetings, the project leads will really show you the ropes. You'll spend like the first couple of meetings sort of learning what the project's about, how they operate in the like because each project sort of has its own like culture to it. They operate in slightly different ways. So you learn how that project operates and sort of get the ropes and learn all the information you need sort of on the job. So you don't need to worry about having like any prerequisite information. Like even if you're not an engineer, we're more than happy to show you all the information you need. So don't feel ever worried about, like, hey, I don't know if I'm qualified enough to be a part of this organization. We accept everyone. We'll teach you absolutely everything you need to know.
Subcommittee chairs are not only open to prior members. We were all subcommittee leads our freshman year. So feel free to apply. Like even like your high school experience is totally fine. Just like bring that up in the interview when you apply.
Cool. I think we answered pretty much everything. Does anyone else have any other questions? EWB or not even EWB related?
Project leads are gonna put out like subcommittee lead applications. So after like the first week of project meetings, just keep an eye out through email or group me for the subcommittee lead, like Google form.
Gotcha. What happens at e-board meetings? Do we have to go? So no, you don't have to go to e-board meetings. E-board meetings are basically only mandatory for executive board members, but they are also open to everyone. Basically what happens at e-board meetings is basically the entire e-board gets together and we basically sort of inform each other on what's going on. We as an executive board come to consensus on what's going on in the chapter. All the projects will present where they are, like all the individual positions will say what's happening related to their role. And we just sort of also hash out like any major decisions regarding the chapter as a whole. So if there's like something big coming up, like a big event, what we want to do and stuff like that, these are where like all the big sort of chapter-wide decisions are made. So it's not mandatory for general members, but you're more than welcome to join, sort of see how the executive board operates and also seeing like, who are making the decisions like in this organization. So yeah, you're more than welcome to join, but it's more of just like a good way for the executive board to come to consensus on everything and also make any bigger decisions for the chapter as a whole. Are there group messages for each sub-projects? So yeah, we'll be sending out links to the Slack and everything. So we operate primarily on Slack, and within Slack, you can see sort of individual channels for each of the projects and stuff like that.
For which project do you choose to work on? Honestly, like I think someone said like they want to go to multiple ones earlier and see like which one they like the best. I'd recommend just like maybe going to each project meeting the first week if you have the time to do so, and just seeing which one you think like fits best with your interests. And again, you don't have to stick to one project.
Yeah, I definitely say, explore, sort of see like what every project is about and sort of just like get a little taste, because I think like they're very different and there's no real concrete way to select. You sort of easiest ways to go and really experience for yourself. Which ones did you pick freshman year? So I picked Camden my freshman year.
Tanzania, you guys should choose Tanzania.
What else do we have? I think that's we're up to date. Any other questions?
I don't see any more questions coming in.
Yeah, otherwise, again, you guys are free to drop the call if we sort of answered any questions you guys have. Just once again,